He was a man many once called one of the best wrestlers in the business, a performer so good they called him a genius. He sold out arenas and played a pivotal role in launching the career of one of wrestling's most iconic figures. He was heavy in the seat but light on his feet, a charismatic showman who held a territory's top championship an incredible 12 times. His name was Playboy Buddy Rose. He had it all. And this is what he became. A running gag. A punchline in a cheap suit, hawking a fake diet on national television. A forgotten footnote in the history of the global juggernaut he helped build. So, how did one of wrestling's sharpest minds, a proven main event draw, become one of its biggest what-if stories? How did a guy they called a genius get buried so completely that an entire generation of fans only knows him as a joke? This is the story of a tragic series of decisions that turned a superstar into a caricature. This is the story of Buddy Rose, the genius Vince McMahon buried. To understand the tragedy, you have to understand the genius. For today's wrestling fans, the name Buddy Rose might not ring the same bells as the Titans of the 80s, but that doesn't mean he wasn't one of them. To really get Buddy Rose's greatness, you have to go back in time, away from the bright lights of the WWF and into the raw, gritty world of territory wrestling. Specifically, Don Owens Pacific Northwest Wrestling, or PNW. Throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, Buddy Rose wasn't just a star in the Pacific Northwest, he was the Pacific Northwest. Billed from Las Vegas, Nevada, the Playboy was the perfect villain. He was arrogant, flamboyant, and completely detestable to the blue-collar crowds of Oregon and Washington. But behind the bleach-blonde hair and cocky sneer was a master of his craft. Often weighing over 300 pounds, Rose moved with the agility of a man half his size. He was a phenomenal technician who could chain wrestle with the best, but he was also a brutal brawler who could make an audience believe he was legitimately trying to tear his opponent apart. This wasn't some mid-card act. This was the main event. Buddy Rose put bodies in seats. The proof is in the gold. Rose held the NWA Pacific Northwest Heavyweight Championship 12 times. Let that sink in. 12 times. In an era where championships meant something, Rose was a constant presence at the top of the card. He tangled with legends like Jimmy Snuka and Rick Martel, and even faced down special attractions like Andre the Giant. He wasn't just a big fish in a small pond, he was the shark, and everyone knew it. But his most legendary contribution was his feud with a young, brash upstart named Roddy Piper. In 1979, Piper was a promising talent, but he wasn't yet the rowdy icon we all know. It was his series of bloody, intense matches against Buddy Rose that truly made him a star. Rose, the established top heel, worked tirelessly to put over Piper, making him look like the toughest hero in the territory. It was a masterclass in wrestling psychology, so successful it basically wrote the blueprint for how to create a top good guy. Piper himself would later credit that feud for establishing his name. Just think about that. Without Buddy Rose's incredible work, the man who would become Hulk Hogan's greatest rival might never have reached those heights. Buddy Rose didn't just have great matches, he created superstars. He was a proven draw, a master storyteller, and the undisputed king of his corner of the wrestling world. And so, inevitably, Vince McMahon came calling. In 1982, the wrestling world was about to be turned upside down. Vince McMahon Jr. had taken over the World Wrestling Federation from his father and had a revolutionary plan for national expansion. To pull it off, he needed established, top-tier talent from the territories, and Playboy Buddy Rose was a hot commodity. For Rose, the move to the WWF seemed like the logical next step. He'd conquered the Northwest and set attendance records. This was his shot at becoming a household name. At first, things looked promising. He was immediately put into a high-profile program with the reigning WWF World Heavyweight Champion, Bob Backlund. This wasn't some throwaway match on TV. This was a main event feud in arenas like Madison Square Garden and the Philadelphia Spectrum. The matches were fantastic. Rose's playboy persona was the perfect foil for the All-American champion Backlund. He pushed the champ to his limit, using his surprising agility and veteran smarts to create believable, exciting contests. The fans hated his guts, which, in 80s wrestling, meant he was doing his job perfectly. But even then, there were subtle, ominous signs. While Rose was presented as a credible challenger, he was never booked like a real threat to the title. He was the villain of the month, a temporary obstacle for the hero to overcome. The feud ended without Rose ever holding the championship. From the perspective of the old territory system, this felt like a missed opportunity. A hot feud like that would often lead to a title change to strike while the iron was hot. But in McMahon's new universe, the formula was different. The goal was to establish the unshakable dominance of the WWF champion. For a guy like Rose, who had held the top title in his territory 12 times, being positioned as a challenger who could never win was the first sign that his role here would be different. It was a glass ceiling, and Buddy Rose had just smacked his head on it for the first time. After his run with Backlund, Rose cycled in and out of the WWF, returning home to the P&W, where he immediately went back to being a main eventer. But by 1985, Vince McMahon was all in on his national vision. He was betting the entire company on a single, spectacular event that would either launch the WWF into the stratosphere or bankrupt him. He called it WrestleMania, and he needed every recognizable name he could get. Buddy Rose was brought back for the historic show. But if his role against Backlund was a subtle demotion, his booking at WrestleMania 1 was a five-alarm fire. He wasn't going to be Playboy Buddy Rose, the charismatic, record-setting champion. No, instead, he was put under a generic mask and given the forgettable name, The Executioner. His opponent was the popular Tito Santana, and their match was slotted to go on first, the very first match in WrestleMania history. On the surface, that sounds like an honor, right? But in the language of wrestling, it was a clear message. The opening match, the curtain jerker, is for warming up the crowd. It's not where you put a performer you see as a top star. The main event of that show featured Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. The co-main event featured Roddy Piper, the very man Buddy Rose had made into a superstar. And where was Buddy? In the opening match, under a mask, his name and history completely erased. The match was short. Tito Santana won, making Buddy Rose the answer to a trivia question: who was the first person to lose at WrestleMania? For a man who had been the top attraction in an entire region, this was more than just a loss. In the eyes of wrestling, this felt like a burial. He was no longer Buddy Rose, the wrestling genius. To this new, rapidly growing national audience, he was a masked nobody, the first jobber of the WrestleMania era. Vince McMahon had taken a proven superstar and cast him as a disposable henchman. It was a baffling waste of talent that stripped Rose of his identity on the biggest stage the business had ever seen. And unfortunately for Buddy, it was about to get a whole lot worse. After a few years away, including a run in the AWA, Buddy Rose returned to the World Wrestling Federation in 1990. By this time, he had gained a significant amount of weight, a physical change that Vince McMahon saw not as a problem, but as a gimmick to be exploited. This decision led to one of the most infamous character assassinations in wrestling history. This was the era of the blow-away diet. Playboy Buddy Rose, the 12-time champion, the man who made Roddy Piper, was gone. In his place was a walking, talking fat joke. The gimmick was painfully simple. During his ring introductions, the announcer would state his real weight, somewhere around 317 pounds. Rose would then snatch the microphone and correct them. He was a slim, trim 217 pounds. A claim that was, obviously, comically untrue. To make matters worse, the WWF produced vignettes parodying diet infomercials. In these skits, Rose promoted the fictional Buddy Rose Blow-Away Diet, which consisted of him pouring powder on himself and using a giant fan to blow away the fat. Of course, he'd look exactly the same afterward. It was humiliating. It was a total burial of everything that had once made him great. His in-ring skill, his masterful psychology, his proven ability to draw money, none of it mattered. He was a comedy act, and the punchline was his own body. While he was still a talented worker, his job now was simply to lose to other stars and make them look good. He lost to Kerry Von Erich in his televised WWF debut. He lost to younger talent in untelevised matches. His role as a serious competitor was over. He was now a caricature. There's a persistent locker room rumor that Vince McMahon told everyone, "I want everybody to work out except for Buddy," because the weight was so central to the gimmick. Whether it's true or not, it speaks volumes. McMahon didn't see Buddy Rose, the world-class wrestler. He saw a physical attribute he could turn into a low-brow comedy sketch. He took a man once respected for his mind and repackaged him as a buffoon. This was a creative decision that baffled many and effectively ensured that for millions of fans, his legacy wouldn't be his championship reigns or his star-making feuds. It would be a silly infomercial and a lie about his weight. After his final WWF run ended in 1991, Buddy Rose's time in the national spotlight was over. He passed away in 2009 at the age of 56, leaving behind a career that feels split in two, the genius and the joke. And this is where the great what if of Buddy Rose's career really comes into focus. What did Vince McMahon's booking really cost him? It wasn't just a championship, it was a legacy. What if, in 1982, Vince McMahon had booked Rose as a legitimate rival to Bob Backlund, maybe even giving him a short run with the WWF Championship? A Playboy champion could have been a radical new kind of villain for the company. What if, at WrestleMania 1, McMahon had presented the real Buddy Rose? Instead of hiding him under a mask, what if the Playboy had a grudge match against his old protege, Roddy Piper? The story was already there, written in the sold-out arenas of the Pacific Northwest. It would have been authentic, compelling, and would have instantly established Rose as a top-tier star to the new national audience. And the biggest what-if of all, what if there had been no blow-away diet? What if, in 1990, the WWF had respected his history and talent? Even as a veteran, a man heavy in the seat but light on the feet could have been a formidable gatekeeper. Imagine the wily veteran Buddy Rose testing a young Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels. He could have been what Harley Race was in his later career, a respected elder statesman whose endorsement meant something. Instead, every time, the easy joke was chosen over the compelling story. A wrestler known for his mind was reduced to his body. A man who created stars was turned into a stepping stone. The legacy of Buddy Rose is one of profound, unfulfilled potential on the biggest stage. When you watch his work in the Pacific Northwest, you see a master at work. You see main event charisma, incredible agility, and a brilliant mind for the business. When you watch his most famous work in the WWF, you see a comedy sketch. It's like watching two different people. In 2019, WWE posthumously inducted Buddy Rose into the legacy wing of its Hall of Fame, an honor given without the televised ceremony of headline inductees. It was an acknowledgement of the man he was, before Vince McMahon decided who he should be. The story of Playboy Buddy Rose is a cautionary tale. It's about how a proven box office attraction was systematically dismantled. He wasn't a failure. He was a genius who was put in a position where his genius didn't matter. He was a main eventer booked as an opening act. He was a master of psychology booked as a punchline. He had the skills, the history, and the charisma to be one of the signature stars of the 80s wrestling boom. But a series of baffling booking decisions buried that potential under a mask, a losing streak, and a pile of fake diet powder. He remains one of professional wrestling's greatest tragedies, and perhaps its most compelling what if. What do you think was the biggest missed opportunity with Buddy Rose? Was it the failure to pull the trigger during the Backlund feud, the insulting booking at the first WrestleMania, or the career-killing blow-away diet gimmick? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dives into wrestling history like this, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about the legends of the Squared Circle. Thanks for watching.